Chisel. Here. Neal. Olson.
Here.
Luce. Zittergruen. Here. Hadley. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Okay, in public comment, we have two presentations. One for the Human Rights Commission.
Mary, you may want to ask if there's anyone from the public to...
I was going to do it at the end. I can do it. You mean if anybody wants to speak first?
Yes, it is identified as 3 public comment, then 4 the presentation, then 5 the presentation.
Oh, thank you
Sorry.
very much. I see that now. Okay, is there anybody who wishes to speak to the council for something that is not on the agenda? Seeing none? Now we'll go to number 4. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Cook. I'm the chair of the Decorah Human Rights Commission. I'm here this evening to provide a report on the Commission's accomplishments for the past year. I'll try to keep it brief and just hit the highlights for 2021 to date, and to share a proposed revised ordinance for the Decorah Human Rights Commission and corresponding revised mission statement. So the Commission was created following a passage of the Civil Rights Ordinance in 2006. Our mission is to increase community awareness and appreciation of human diversity through educational programs and to provide appropriate remedies where discrimination has been identified. And specifically, based on the Iowa Civil Rights Commission law, the Commission is responsible for addressing discrimination in housing, education, accommodations or services, employment, and credit. Let's see, there are 7 commission members, Sandhya Hurikatan, Suri Stevens, Ben Cruz-Kagan, Maria Letts, Joshua Ratel Khan. We have 1 open position and myself. We recognize Rowan Collins and Andrew Ellingson for their service on the commission, and I think I'll let the rest of that go. I don't think we have any commission members here this evening. Okay. And we've continued our community connection since 2019 with the Northeast Iowa Peace and Justice Center and Decorah's Collective Action for Racial Equity. Charlene Bohr, the Executive Director of the Northeast Iowa Peace and Justice Center, attends DRC meetings, and Maria Letts is a co-leader of CARE and is a member of the DHRC. To expand our community connection in 2022, we plan to invite Luther College students who have identified as community engaged and human rights leaders to attend the DHRC meetings as well. So accomplishments. We hosted and supported events in the past, and prior to COVID, we did quite a few. Due to lower attendance with online during COVID times, we decided to kind of take a little step back from that and do some more focus on what you'll hear more about tonight with the ordinance changes. We did discuss co-hosting a pronouns education, but the person who was leading that left Decorah, and so we had tabled that for a while. Oh, I forgot to bring up a copy of my stickers, but you've seen it before. We did distribute the All Are Welcome stickers, which you've seen, which are in the shape of Iowa. I was going to bring one, but I forgot. Andrew Ellingson was very involved in developing the graphics for that, which was great, and we distributed those stickers. More than around 50 were distributed initially, and they're available through the chamber and through City Hall. And revised DHR ordinance. In 2019, the DHRC discovered that the current investigation process was not possible with a commission of volunteers and no legal expertise or guidance to conduct interviews or issue subpoenas, for example. We spoke with other cities in Iowa with human rights commissions and found that cities with populations similar to Decorah were also struggling with this issue. So basically, anybody besides Dubuque, Des Moines, Iowa City, Davenport that didn't have an actual hired individual wasn't able to do these investigations, even though it's in their codes and they were struggling with the same issue. So we researched a lot of alternatives. We reached out to executive directors of human rights commissions and other leaders in the state to discuss alternative approaches. We investigated how other cities our size handle the complaints. We even created a spreadsheet to do this and talk to people. We discussed potential approaches with the city manager and our city lawyer, and we reached out to members of Decorah's 2030 visionary group as well. So in February 2021, we met with the civil rights lawyer and former executive director of the Des Moines Human Rights Civil Rights Commission, Joshua Barr, who has experience working with stakeholders to revise policies, and consulted with him on different strategies. From all this research and discussions, and with the help of the city's lawyer, John Anderson, the DRCC revised the ordinance to reflect current language for protected groups, to outline a path for complaints to best support complainants and respondents, and to clarify the commission's role in the complaint process and how records of the complaints are kept on file. All the changes are reflected in the revised ordinance, which you have with you tonight. So the mission statement, from all that we'll talk about later, basically the mission statement goes from the Human Rights Commission mission is to increase community awareness and appreciation of human diversity through educational programs, investigate claims of discriminating practices, and provide appropriate remedies where discrimination has been found to exist, scratching the middle line with the practices of investigating, so we're no longer investigating, but we still do the educational programs and provide appropriate remedies where there have been complaints. And there are complaints. So the bias complaints during this time period, we just had one. The DRCC received an employment complaint in November of 2021. The complaint's adult daughter emailed the DHRC chair with details about the complaint. The complaint and her daughter were able to resolve the issue with their employer, and they thanked the DRCC for its support. So it was pretty quickly resolved, but they appreciated us being available. So in conclusion, the DHRC sees the importance of being a group that community members feel comfortable with to voice their concerns, discrimination complaints, and new ideas. As a commission, we will continue to seek out ways to help community members feel empowered to make changes in Decorah that benefit everyone who lives, learns, and travels in Decorah. So thank you for the opportunity to speak about our accomplishments and plans, and we'll talk later about the revised ordinance.
And just as a side note, John Anderson's going to be late to the meeting, but he will be here and available during the ordinance discussion.
And there is one opening, is that correct? Is there, do you have?
One open.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the work that you guys do. I know you meet regularly, and it's always interesting, and I'll look forward to the conversation later on with the investigation too. Any other comments or questions that you have?
Thanks for all your work on the ordinance.
Okay, then we have a presentation by Nrcs Watershed and Flood Prevention Operations, WFPO program.
That's me.
Okay.
Let y'all pass over. Good evening. My name is Scott Cagle. I'm Assistant State Conservationist for Natural Resource Conservation Service in Iowa. I head up the grants, the partnership division that we deal with all the grants and programs that Nrcs offers throughout the state. And we also have some national agreements that we handle. The program I've been asked to speak to you about this evening is the Watershed Flood Prevention Operation. There's a lot of talk from Washington about money coming for infrastructure, and yes, we know it's coming. We just really don't know how it's going to hit when it gets here. So we do have the Watershed Flood Prevention Operation, or we call WFPO, that will help a community that's having flooding issues. But there's a step before you go straight into WFPO, and that's called the Preliminary Investigation and Feasibility Report. I guess my presentation didn't make it here, but you got it?
We got it also, I think, as a background material. We read it.
So.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, I'm trying to be brief with this because we can talk all night about WFPO, but basically this is a program that fits about 250,000 acres max in a watershed. Now, you can have a sub-watershed, and if you have 2 or 3 sub-watersheds, they need to be contiguous. You don't want one here and one over there. So that's what the program will do. Next slide, please. If you've ever heard of the old PL 566 program, this is PL 566 revamped. It does a lot of good, building structures, providing flood prevention, and the word I've got highlighted there is project sponsors, which if it could be a city, a county, a soil and water conservation board, any of those folks will qualify to be the sponsor. And I'll explain a little bit more why I've got that highlighted as we go through this. But this is an agreement between the federal government and the local sponsor to put in some kind of treatment into a watershed. Next slide, please. So some of the things WFPO addresses, of course, erosion and sediment control that we're dearly concerned about in NRCS, watershed protection, flood prevention, water quality improvements as far as what's coming past your community in the streams, rural municipal water, industrial water supply. There's a population, I believe it's 50,000. If you're above that, then this program won't help you. Then the fish and wildlife habitat enhancement and hydropower sources. And I don't think y'all are going to put in a TVA dam anywhere up here. All right, next slide, please. Now, this is why I highlighted sponsors before. We have a lot of watershed structures in the state, about 2,800, and they're all sitting on an easement that a board of supervisors or a county board of soil and water conservation commissioners, they own that easement. They own that structure. It may be on private land, but they own the land it sits on, and they're responsible for operation and maintenance. Now, some of these were built 50, 60, 75 years ago, and as you well know, there's been several boards come and go, and when these things were built, there was a pot of money set aside for operation and maintenance. And over time, people forgot, why is this money here? And they forgot that they actually had responsibility for that structure. So that's why I highlighted sponsors, because if there is something built, whoever is in charge as a sponsor, they're in charge of it from here on out. And one way we're encouraging communities to address that is the first, I'll put it in your minutes, when you have a board meeting the 1st January, need to discuss, this is this pot of money, this is what it's for. So anyway, we also look for some cost share from the sponsor, and it really depends on what you're trying to do. There's no set limit on cost share. Watershed information, if you've got a watershed coordinator or somebody familiar with a watershed, we will become best friends, because I've got to collect a tremendous amount of data to make this, the preliminary investigation and feasibility report fly. We also look for communities that have taxing authority, and then the ugly word down there at the bottom is eminent domain. And the only reason I bring that up is just in case you have to have a huge structure that you have to get land, then that is a possibility. We don't encourage that. We don't push that. It's just needs to be talked about up front. That's what's included in WFPO. All right, next slide, please. So the reason they put this in, we have already run into one. There was a time where you could go straight into the planning stage of WFPO. Several $100,000 were invested. The sponsors started their watershed plan, and they were studying flood prevention, which means they're going up the watershed and build structures. Well, in the meantime, the municipality downstream went and bought up all the structures that were in the flood zone and raised them. They're gone. So now, if you go upstream and put several $1 million into structures, you're not having an impact downstream. So you have to make sure, you know, where you fall. Do you fall in flood prevention, or do you fall in watershed protection? Because they're very different. The funding for the PIFR comes to NRCS staff, and that's what we do. And once that study is complete, it's given to the state conservationist, Mr. John Hubert, and he makes the final decision whether we move forward or not. So that's kind of the safety net to make sure the project is feasible before we take millions of dollars of taxpayers' money and put them into a hole and don't have any benefit from them. All right, next slide, please. So for the PIFR, this is what we're going to decide, whether you need flood prevention or watershed protection or neither. You know, maybe there's not enough need in the watershed for this program. And then we also have a little help on this. Next slide, please. Well, we move into, you know, if you do move into WFPO, you have 3 different areas. You go to planning. Once planning is completed and you have a watershed plan that's approved by the chief of NRCS and by the watershed department in Arkansas, then you can start moving into design. And your design's where your engineering comes in, designs the structures that you need to build, and then the final step is implementation. WFPO will pay for up to 100% of all construction costs. So it is a good program if you can justify the need. All right, next slide. Now, some other things we talk about from NRCS standpoint is the programs we already have available. And what I mean by that is if you have producers up in the watershed above your community, you can work with those producers through the other programs we have. Maybe they want to put cover crops out. And what that cover crops do over time is they build soil health and organic matter. You basically create a huge sponge upstream, because just 1% of organic matter increase in that soil, you can hold about 700,000 gallons of water per acre. And nobody thinks about that. So if you, about 1% of soil organic matter increased, you can hold about 700,000 gallons per acre of water. So the more you increase that soil health, the more water you can hold, you create a sponge upstream. And we already have programs in place that can help producers do that. So we have to look at that. Or you may have a producer upstream that has a nice area that wants to build a wetland that will hold back water in a flood situation and gradually release it. It'll also provide habitat. It also reduces nitrogen and phosphorus that we're desperately trying to get off the landscape. So there's a lot of benefit from working with your producers upstream if that fits your area. Corps Engineers has a new program called Power. And what Power will do is look at your watershed through LiDAR images. It will determine the houses, the buildings, the things that are downstream, and it will assign a score. And that will help us working on the PIFR to where we can see which way do we need to go with this study. So we have a lot of extra tools that are coming online, and we're just now exploring Power. So, you know, we're hoping it's going to help out. The biggest problem we have right now with PIFR, and this is the bad news, this program has been dormant for about 13 years. We used to have a watershed department in Iowa. It's no longer there. We have 2 remaining members, and they could retire any day. So we're having to rebuild the team. And Lord knows they've got me running the thing and writing these PIFRs, and I'm like, okay. And I have an engineer that reads it up and slaps my hand, and we go on from there. But what you'll have to do is you'll join the list. We're completing one right now in Linn County. We have 3 others ahead of you. And the next step from this meeting, if you decide to pursue a PIFR, would be to write the state conservationist a real nice letter and say, we would like to pursue a PIFR. That's the very best I can do for you right now, is to get you on the list. From there, if some of this stuff works out, we work on Iowa Homeland Security, EPA, FEMA, everybody has programs. And Iowa Homeland Security has a checklist now, so if a community is having flooding issues, and we know it's going to take time for us to help you, but one of them may be able to help you with some programs that they have, and we can get your name on the list and say Decorah needs somebody to go look, and if anybody else can help them before we can, then they can come help you. So we do have options. But, you know, we also have some other programs. We have a regional conservation partnership program, and there's a $10 million ceiling on this program. There's actually 2 versions of it. One is classic. It basically goes what I was describing up in the watershed and works with producers. It will also build structures, but it involves them to protect the community downstream. So you can work through that program, and there's another version of that called the alternative funding arrangement. Now, that one can get a little strange. It can actually reward that producer, not on top of the cost share to put the practices in, but it can also pay them for performance, where they're taking sediment, nutrients off the soil. So that's 2 other options that we already have in NRCS land that you can go ahead and both of the RCPPs are open right now to April 13th. Now, it's a real quick jump to jump on a major program like that, but it would be something to think about for next year. So, next slide, please.
And we can do that while we're on the list?
Yes, right now. And that's all my slides. There's my contact information. I left some cards and everybody a sheet on Wfpo. And, you know, it's not terrible news. We just can't help you right now. We will get you on the list if you'll send a letter to the state conservationist, and then we will go from there. So does anybody have any questions?
Travis, do you have any more information you want to pass on? I know that there was a letter from Sustainability in the Dropbox as well.
Mm-hmm. So that letter from Sustainability, I believe, was dated March 8th. They had postponed having this conversation at their previous meeting, anticipating that there'd be a presentation tonight, and then the potential action would be in the future. Jeremy Brill, city engineer, has been in recent contact with Scott, correct? Direct? Not
No,
direct?
that's it. I believe
Okay.
Michelle Barnes, I believe, is who I've been.
Who've been working with
Right.
directly, and so we're
Okay.
inserting Jeremy into those conversations, getting staff involved as well at this point. So we do believe that there will be, if not the next meeting, the subsequent, that would allow sustainability to meet, make a recommendation, then a potential action item for council. That'll also give staff more time to do research and get any questions to Scott.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Scott, are you familiar with the Upper Iowa River Watershed Management Authority?
Vaguely.
Okay. I mean, they've got similar programs that they're working on as well up here. I think since 2015, they've had a grant of like $4.5 million or something like that. I think they've been doing similar type projects. And it's been going very, very well for them. So appreciate you.
Yes, well, we have several regional conservation partnership programs going right now. We've got 10 in the state. We've got more than the rest of the states except Oregon. $65 million worth of federal funding, $131 million in partner contributions. So folks are serious in this state about cleaning up the water.
Okay.
Can it apply to municipal watersheds? Like we have a drainage creek running through the middle of our city. That if we wanted to, because we don't control the land.
Right. We can do work on some public land. The alternative funding arrangement would be a better choice on that one. But if you decide to go this route, call me and let's sit down and talk, and I'll be glad to come back up here and work with you on which way you want to run with it. But there's a lot of nuances in the application process. There's several things in there that you need to know about before you start the application.
Sure.
And I give everybody a level playing field. I explain this is what they're looking for in that section of the application. I can't write it for you. I can't say, yeah, that'll work. I can just say this is what they're looking for.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for the work you're
Appreciate
doing.
I'm gonna head back to Des Moines.
Okay. Consent agenda.
Item A, minutes of the March 7th, 2022 regular meeting. Item B, claims.
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Luce had a question about minutes.
Okay,
We
Do you
did
want-
not, did we have him counted for attendance?
I marked him down when.
Okay, that
came
sounds
on.
good.
Steve, did you want them pulled from the consent agenda for further discussion, or maybe just a quick question?
Question was if, excuse me, move to adopt got dropped out of the waiving of the third reading of 1288. Fourth or fifth paragraph from the bottom.
Okay. John, you okay if we just mark that as a clerical typo?
Yes.
We'll get that corrected.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we had a motion. Did we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergrun,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Accept and file fiscal year 21 audit. Travis?
Yeah, so the fiscal 21 audit was presented at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting starting at 5 o'clock. The budget is due to the state by March 31st, and so as past practice from the city, presenting to council for acceptance. The audit is what it is. I don't know that there's an alternative to council to say we don't like this audit. You need to change this and get it back to us. So recommendation from staff is to accept and file.
I would make said motion.
Second.
Motion by Chisel, seconded by Neal. Any further discussion?
Just out of curiosity, how much does the audit cost the city? Do we know?
I don't have that off. the
I'm
top
sorry,
of my head.
I'll figure it out. I'll send you an email or
We
something.
can
I was just
follow up
curious.
after.
Just sign your bill.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Chisholm,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergren,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider approval of wastewater discharge agreement between Save Decorah and Toppling and Goliath Brewing Company. Travis?
Okay, so I'll give a brief overview and then lean on Mike for further in-depth conversation. Since Toppling Goliath opened the new brewery up on the hill, the city's been working with them in conjunction with the DNR on their loadings that they're sending to the wastewater treatment plant. Breweries can be a bit tricky on wastewater treatment plants, it's especially biological treatment plants. And so based on the loadings that TG has been sending our wastewater treatment plant, now that they figure out what their averages are, that they're online, this pre-treatment agreement creates additional space from what our plant is engineered to handle and what we're going to allow TG, as well as our other existing pre-treatment agreements, to send us. These are for high waste commercial only that we have to have these pre-treatment agreements. Toppling Goliath has agreed to the terms of this pre-treatment agreement, and it has been signed off on the DNR as acceptable to them as well. One thing to point out, that should the rate structure change for industrial loadings, you know, we charge, is it 10 cents per
pound of BOD and 12 cents per pound of suspended solids.
So if adjustments are made to those rates, this pre-treatment agreement does lock those in for Toppling Goliath. Anything, Mike, you want to hit on in particular?
You know, we've been working through this for a couple of years. A lot of moving parts on this. They're looking to spend up to $1.9 million on a pretreatment facility to treat their waste. So they could do it in a phase approach where they just tackle the suspended solids and then do the BOD, or they could do it all at once. We are also holding off on billing them until next January. So the billing cycle won't start until then, using the current rate structure that we have in our city code. This gives them time, if they do put up a facility, it gives them time to operate their equipment and work through that process before we start the billing process. You know, when we look at doing an upgrade, I think the DNR gives us about 24 months to work through ours before they set our limits, like if we did a nutrient reduction upgrade. But this gives them time. You know, our engineer, Steve Van Dyke, was the one that put this together. It's very common when a new industry come online and they have to invest into a pretreatment that you give them that time. You know, we have some existing facilities that pre-treat right now. Something would change in-house for their system, they would actually, you know about it ahead of time. We would expect them to make the changes right away to meet the requirements that they have with the state and with us. But since this is new for Toppling, we're asking time to work through that. And then it's important to lock in those rates for a couple different reasons. With that big of an investment, they can work through their planning stage. You know, if they lower their rate, lower their loading by, let's say 50%, and they're fine with that current rate, so be it. But if we look at doing an upgrade for our plant, and it's gonna cost millions, we're gonna have to do a rate study to see what a pound of BOD suspended solid is gonna cost us. Well, at that time, hey, if we do an upgrade and we're gonna take on this much debt, we're gonna have to increase that rate. Well, we can pass that on to them, and if that's gonna like push them over the top, we're like, you know what, we're gonna add a new treatment to our facility. That gives them also time to plan ahead and work through that also. You know, if they do the reduction of both suspended solids and BOD, more than likely it's gonna be close to domestic or below, so there's not gonna be any extra strength charge to that. Just to throw one more thing in there, you know, if we're required to do nutrient reduction at the plant, and we're hoping to maybe push that out and not be forced into it, but if the government says, okay, you have a deadline of 24 months to get this done, there's biological treatment that we're looking at where it would be a simple process to remove the nitrogen and phosphorus, but you'd have to go to an anoxic zone. Well, in doing so, you'd need an extra strength wastewater to come in. So there would be a possibility that we would need some of that. So we're kind of keeping everything open as we work through this. Ted Kennan, he's the director of the engineering at Toppling Goliath. He is here. So if you have any specific questions for Ted or any more questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Generally speaking, when you and I talked, it sounded like being able to do this now could be very advantageous as we're moving forward and expanding.
Absolutely. You know, it's our city engineer that, for the plant that put this together. He'll be the same engineer that's looking at our upgrade when the time comes. Travis and I met with him about 2 weeks ago, and we have a new game plan with our facility plan. So we're moving forward with that again also. There was a major delay with COVID in the DNR. And then we were pretty much ready to go again when Travis came aboard when Chad left. So we just held off, gave Travis some time here, and then we met with him 6 months later, and here we are. So anyways.
Oh, council comments, suggestions?
Just that last thing you said. If the EPA does change their game, or we need the solids, and Toppling has spent $1.9 million to pre-treat, is it just on them because they had good business sense and good business practices now?
So currently with how the nutrient reduction is being played out, if we're putting a new plant up, we got to meet those new rules and guidelines. The structure of our plant is outstanding. We can probably get 50 to 60 years more out of our structure that we have at the plant. If we don't have to modify the structure, they're not going to require us to do an upgrade for nitrogen and phosphorus currently, because we can say, hey, you know, that would be a huge expense to our taxpayers. We can't afford it. Now, if we were adding an aeration basin to add capacity, well, that's a perfect time that, hey, we can do some modification to the aeration basin, and we could meet those nutrient requirements. So, you know, we're looking at doing a phase at the plant where we're just going to meet like our electrical needs, our pump needs, and some of our aeration blower needs. There's a possibility that later this year there might be some funding available. You know, if the funding was to the point that it was once in a lifetime funding, as they're calling it, well, we would, you know, take advantage of that and meet those requirements. But there's different types of treatment that we can do. If we don't have the extra strength from toppling, you know, obviously there's some other treatment options for us. But
So you've gamed those scenarios out already with your engineer?
oh yes, absolutely,
Okay.
100%. Our biggest thing is we're at capacity right now. If an industry would come to town right now, we would have to tell them to hold off. We can't treat it. We're at pretty much max capacity. If Toppling Goliath would put in a pre-treatment facility and lower their loading to us, that frees us up.
Gotcha.
So there's a fine line of how much we need and how much we can't handle. So they're giving us 8 months to work through this process, and then we're going to have to renegotiate the loadings with Toppling Goliath anyways, no matter what. But there's a lot of moving parts to this. Our engineer is on it. The DNR staff members have reviewed this numerous times. Travis and I obviously are involved. So at this time, I think it's a pretty good agreement between both parties.
Hadley would move to approve the wastewater discharge agreement between the City of Decorah and Toppling Goliath Brewing.
Neil seconds.
Motion made by Hadley, seconded
Luce would second.
we have a second by Neal. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Sittergruen,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel.
Motion carried. Consider approval of site plan for Skyline Lanes. You want to give background on that?
Okay, again, I'll give brief, and then Jeremy and Greg are both here for any further questions in detail. Skyline Lanes proposing addition to the building, additional parking, along with a remodel of some of the interior. Skyline has a site plan that currently needed, and they were granted 7 variances from the Board of Adjustment. Staff did note that there's a sanitary line near the property that may require, and we're emphasizing may, because we're not sure if a current easement exists or not. So we do want to make that known that we need to secure an easement for that sanitary line. Let's see here. Currently, no sidewalk shown on Mill Street as part of the site plan. Staff recommends that if one is not required at this time, that the driveway be constructed with a sidewalk crossing, should they be required to do so in the future. Right-of-way work permit will be required before work can be done in the right-of-way. P&Z has recommended approval, and staff is recommending approval contingent on the items listed.
Why would they not be required to put a sidewalk in?
That's a good question.
There's no sidewalks on the properties to the north or the south to connect to, but I'm inclined to require a sidewalk as part of the permit.
During the discussion though on P&Z, he did say that he would be willing to work with that going forward, but with the cost of construction currently. But they did have a discussion at P&Z on that, and so he was willing to work with that.
I guess I was just under the assumption that we have a sidewalk plan that says that any new construction needs to put in a sidewalk. So I guess I don't want to walk down the path that past councils have walked down of saying, oh no, you don't need a sidewalk, only to wind up having to put in a sidewalk as long as all the reconstruction is going on.
Yeah, I listened to that P&Z meeting as well, and they were very open to the idea of putting a sidewalk in. They're just the mere fact that that sidewalk doesn't run up North Mill at all on that side of the street.
Right.
Is the reason that one doesn't exist currently.
Right. I mean, this seems to me to be a place where, we've talked about the importance of identifying the places where sidewalks would create connectivity and, serving especially public spaces, the heart of the downtown schools and the pool. And this is a place where I think sidewalks would actually be a priority for council enforcement of our ordinance. And so I think this is a place to start as any on Mill Street. And we don't have a motion on the table, right?
Correct.
No.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with the your wording, Travis, was
Contingent upon the securing the easement for sanitary should one not exist, sidewalk added on Mill Street, and just again asserting that a right-of-way work permit's required before work can be done.
yeah, and I want to. So I guess contingent on all those things, including the sidewalk along the entire property, not just the sidewalk on the driveway.
Well, there is sidewalk on Hively already, right? They're not touching it.
They're talking Mill Street.
Yeah, I know, but you
Mill
said
Street.
around the whole property. I was just looking at other places that would need it, but.
Yep, just on Mill Street.
I did have one question for Jeremy, though. I know that area down there along Hively is really problematic as far as stormwater runoff and stuff like that. Do you foresee any issues with the building that they're going to be pursuing there to cause any problems along that line?
No, I think our problems are going to be addressed with larger pipes in our storm sewer system.
Okay.
So I wouldn't see any.
And
We
this
talked a
won't
little bit
affect any of
about
that?
making some changes to their driveway entrance off of Hively, but again, we would keep that in mind.
Okay.
And is this, I assume this is going to meet the size capacity for keeping enough water on site?
No,
We won't.
How does that work?
That's a lot of pavement.
it's, it's underneath the size requirements.
But what about the new parking lot that's where the former house was. We
The-
just changed didn't we just change the size for undisturbed things? for
Correct. For the
Stormwater?
disturbed soil was less than an acre.
So wouldn't that new lot,
But
310?
It's less than an acre. Yeah, so the requirement is if it's more than an acre, it requires onsite. This project, to our understanding, for the disturbed area is less than an acre.
Gotcha.
Even if it's adjoining something that then makes it that big.
The whole property is, the whole project is less than an acre.
Now, I have a motion, but I haven't had a second, so.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion made by Zittergruen, seconded by Olson. Just one question. Would there be a possibility of having a time frame for the sidewalk so that it would be in by a certain time, since there's a lot of building costs currently going on and there isn't any, the sidewalk isn't going anywhere?
I know, can staff remind me, or council as well, within my 6 months here, there was one other property that 2 years was given as a recommendation from P&Z, but, it was the church property, wasn't it?
Hobbs property, the
Oh,
triangle
that's right.
lot off of, just off of Short Street.
But what I want to point out is, if it comes to an enforcement issue and the council grants, we're going to allow you 2 years to install the sidewalk, all the work will already have been done, and the only remaining feat is the sidewalk, trying to get the sidewalk placed in after the fact. If, again, assuming that it's an unwilling party, is going to be difficult.
This question.
Meaning they're gonna put the sidewalk in when they do all the work.
If council doesn't give 2 years to get it in or something like that, yes, it would be required as part of the site plan and part of the building permit. Whereas if, 2 years or 3 years to get the sidewalk in, then it becomes an enforcement issue on the city side, that where the rest of the building's done, the only thing left is the sidewalk.
So the trouble that we got in was that it wasn't in the site plan, it wasn't required. And I don't wanna see that happen again, so I guess
I'm just asking.
yeah, no, I think we need to require it as part of the site plan that sidewalks are there.
Yeah, I don't want to get too hung up on the sidewalk thing, just because this is a much bigger project than just that. I'm excited about the investment in our downtown. I'm excited that, this is how the system should work. It's a private owner doing something that's going to, bring business to the community and increase our city's, revenues. It's just important to me that as part of this project, our ordinances are followed. We have a law. We should make sure that it's followed when we have leverage. This is when we have leverage. So I'm inclined to agree with Emily that this is the time to ensure that we enforce our ordinance.
Okay, any further discussion?
I just have a question, and it's just a question. The new lights, I was looking at the specs, and I see that it can dim down to 10%. Would you be dimming down when you're not in business hours, just to save power and not be lighting up an empty parking lot?
So basically, we have 3 lights shown. One's over the main parking lot. That one I envision running dusk to dawn. The 2 lights over in the residential
Right, the
area,
new, yeah.
those lights we would either dim or shut off after business hours. And the big thing was we worked with Greg and Jeremy that, to meet the city standard for a full cutoff, so it would have been less expensive to put a pole in the center of that space. But to be a good neighbor, we want to make sure that we don't have any
Leak, yeah.
pipe leading onto their side. And we've been in talks with her about putting a fence up that, kind of let her choose for what height she wants that.
Great.
It's always tough when business and residential comes together, and it makes it so much easier when you try to be good neighbors. So thank you for that.
It's challenging when she only has about 5 feet from her house to her property line.
Right.
We're trying to do the best we can.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
One item I do want to note, just so council's aware, this project, there has been a request made for rebates or tax abatement to help offset the costs associated with the project. So I know there's been some question, at least among staff as well, of what is the timing of that. Mine has been my previous experience has been post-site plan, but trying to time it that it's pre-building permit issued so that, one, the developer knows what they're authorized to go ahead with on the project, and it also is still allows for the city to, the argument's still there that we're providing an incentive to help them with the project and make the project happen. So I did want to note that at this time.
I would just want to state that if we did do tax abatement, that I would want to make sure that stormwater was sensitively approached. I know you're being sensitive about lighting. You're being understanding about sidewalks. That area is a challenging area for stormwater, and if we're gonna abate taxes that would allow us to fix stormwater problems in the future, I guess I would want to make sure that we're also abating something that is handling, not contributing to stormwater problems.
Okay, and that discussion would come after the site plan approval, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Because it appears that this is going to require an amendment to the plan for a project, which is very common for any project that's coming up in an area. If it's not specified in the plan, you need to amend the plan to include it.
Okay, any further discussion, questions? Roll call?
Zittergruen?
Aye.
Luce?
Aye.
Sorry. Olson?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Chisel? Neal?
Hi.
Great.
I want to echo my other council member sentiments. This is going to be really great for the community, and so thanks for the investment that you're making.
Thank you very much.
Golf simulator. Come on, Russell.
Axe
Okay.
throwing.
At least two of those.
Well, we keep asking for requests. I think we'll go on to the next item.
Shooting range.
Okay. Consider approval of site plan for Sunflower Child Care and Discovery Center.
Okay, again, I'll get background, Jeremy and Greg, for further in-depth questions. Sunflower site plan, there is an item that is missing from the application that we do want clarification on. It's the height of the building to ensure zoning code compliance. The site plan indicates that parking stalls are only 18 feet long. 20 feet long is required by code, so if 18 feet is going to be what they want approved, they will have to get a variance from the Board of Adjustments for the size. Site plan also includes removal of about a dozen boulevard trees and does not show replacement. Staff would like to have the applicant coordinate with the city forester to either install new or potentially relocate existing trees. Site plan also does not show sidewalks in the right-of-way. The applicant wishes to install sidewalks in the interior of the site to make these pedestrian connections. Staff recommends that an easement be secured if allowed for the sidewalks to go through the interior of the property, but a right-of-way sidewalk should be installed on the west side of the street along Clearview. Also for note, more for the applicant, geothermal well construction permit must be completed, as well as storm management plan submitted. Staff would recommend approval contingent on those items. Anything I missed, Jeremy or Greg?
Clarifying, go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just gonna say, the first item about the building height, that has since been provided, so we would not need that anymore. We have that now.
Could you go over the sidewalk recommendations again? I'd like to understand
Yes,
while I'm looking
so-
at the map. Thanks.
The applicant is requesting that the sidewalk, instead of what would be required, is a sidewalk in the right-of-way adjacent to Clearview and Commerce, staying within the right-of-way. What the applicant is wanting to do is run the sidewalk up to the north into the property, west into the property, and then run between the parking lot and the building, and then make a connection then as it runs south to Clearview and then further west.
And staff recommendation is to accept that proposal?
I don't know that I would go that far. Staff's recommendation is if council wants to allow that, then staff recommends we secure an easement for that.
Okay.
Is there
I'm trying to
currently
figure out
any,
where they're going.
is there
again.
currently any sidewalks on either Clearview or Commerce there? I mean, on that side of the street, either one? Nothing? Nothing out there? I didn't think so.
So one of the reasons staff expressed especially Clearview is the Discovery Center aspect. There are hotels and, you know, this is going to be a destination type center that young kids are going to be going to. And so, especially with the hotels down Clearview and the residential areas adjacent to it.
Commerce.
Commerce.
Yeah, right. Clearview's the one that kind of angles back.
Thank you.
Why did,
Go ahead, Emily.
no, I'm just curious why they would want the sidewalk to come through the property to the front. I mean, as opposed to going through, as opposed to bypassing that. I guess I'm just a little, but I
Well,
might be
I
looking
believe
at
the
wrong
thought along, yeah, it's cost, but the.
I know, but when you're spending that much money, I'm like, it's a sidewalk.
I believe the thought, and I'm trying not to speak for individuals, but I believe the thought is also if individuals are walking on the sidewalk in that vicinity, they are more than likely going to the center. So instead of coming down to the corner and wrapping around, then coming back into the property, it's sending them to the center direct.
And in our packet, is it that green? Yeah.
The green dotted line.
So, I know we don't have a motion on the table yet. Should we do that and then discuss the sidewalk? Or would it be easier to figure out what we want and then make that motion?
Figure out probably what we
All
want.
right,
I think-
my inclination, I'm so appreciative for all the work that Lindsay and the committee have done, and I genuinely understand, you know, the sense that most pedestrians in the neighborhood would be going to or from the center. I can appreciate the logic there, but I'm hoping that this is a project that that lasts and serves the city of Decorah for decades, and we don't know what people's pedestrian patterns are going to look like decades from now. It has changed a lot in the last 2 decades. It'll change again in the next 2 decades. People change over time. And so my inclination is to follow the conventional wisdom that is, you know, serves cities really well by making sure that the sidewalks go along the right of way where people expect them to go. And the reason I'm arguing for that, I was thinking about this on, you know, a bike ride earlier with my kids, where we ended up having to wend through a parking lot at the Bank of the West drive-through facility. That's how we connect from my school to our city's sidewalk network, is through a drive-through. And my daughter just plowed right through the parking lot and right into traffic. And it was, you know, maybe a moment where I should have been paying better attention as a parent. But I do know that there's a lot of moments where I have to pay really careful attention because of our uncontiguous and sometimes not very sensible, the way that our sidewalks often start and stop. It's my firm belief that we should build sidewalks where people, and especially children, expect them to be, and that we just are consistent on it, even if we really like the project, even if there's good reasoning for it. We would never build a road that took a shortcut through private property, and this to me seems to be the parallel case for people who choose to get around not in the road. And so I'm going to support a site plan that involves conventional sidewalks.
And can you clarify for me, would that be along Clearview, which is that shorter, and then also along Commerce?
The whole thing.
Yes, and I noticed that their plan does have the sidewalk along Commerce meander a little bit onto their property line. To me, that would be a deviation I would find acceptable, but then I'd want it to continue along the south edge of the parking lot, in the place where conventional sidewalks go. So I'm you know, I know that maybe that's not what the Sunflower Boosters want to hear. I'm one of them, but I think there's good reason to build sidewalks where people expect them to be.
Lindsay, is the sidewalk coming off of Montgomery to the parking lot and the approach to the Sunflower, to the Discovery Center ADA grade?
I Can you hear me just first?
Yes.
Okay. The center sits up on the hill. It's a good question. The center sits up on the hill, and we do have a grade that rises as it approaches the building. So we're leaving Montgomery and going up the hill the whole way, basically. And we've worked to include the length there and the grades to be, I'm going to call it an acceptable grade line. The ADA grades are generally probably slightly flatter than what we're able to do there, but the grade within the site, I think, is acceptable. We'll have a difficult time in some other locations relative to commerce for some of the same reasons, just because of where things are trying to meander.
That's what I was wondering. If you brought it down straight from the rounded edge of the parking lot just below the storm basin, and you brought the other one down into the easement area, it would give you a longer approach back up to the Discovery Center, and it would give you the same amount of length, but in a lower area along Commerce, right?
Yeah.
And then and then eventually, if we were to find it necessary, you could extend the sidewalk along Commerce and along Clearview, in that right of way. Yeah.
I have to be sure I'm following you. I mean, maybe if I'm on the same concept, when we leave Montgomery Street and follow the sidewalk that's on the plan, and I think Steve mentioned this, there was the idea of branching then back down to Commerce and following Commerce closer to the street, in other words, down in the right of way.
So meeting the crosswalk there, you can see the crosswalk from the bike trail right there. So you would just be matching the sidewalk right to the intersection. You'd be running it along the easement, and then you'd have a little bit longer approach back up to the building itself, but you'd have a longer slope to be able to have compliant grade.
I think I'm following you a little better. So you move it back toward Commerce.
Correct. Moving the longer portion into the easement, into the city easement, and then extending your approach down from the building a little bit more. I mean,
sure.
It's like maybe 15 more feet, and that would grant you more slope to get to compliance potentially, because
Yep, we'd get a little bit of length. The two things, I guess, where we pushed it up toward where it's at, one was that it's a little easier to have the ramp and the handicap set up for the landing on the Montgomery Street sidewalk. In other words, we have a slope up from Commerce as you come off of that. That's probably, if it's done today, we would do it a little differently for ADA reasons in the bike path that's already along Montgomery. We would have to flatten that some. I think the other reason, though, really where there's some trees in there that we were trying to avoid. We were already kind of being pretty hard on the boulevard trees. And so there was some in there that were a little bit tougher. I shouldn't say that, different way. A little easier to avoid if we jumped it over to where we put it. You're right about the length. We're starting out at a slightly lower spot on Montgomery. So there is a little bit of, we give up a little of what we gain that way. But
right. It's a trade, but it would then allow for more traditional sidewalks in the future if Commerce or Clearview were to expand with sidewalks.
Yeah, maybe a suggestion would be, we haven't met with the forester yet for that request, and I completely agree with that requirement. I was hoping to do that anyway. Maybe we should meet with the forester and review the tree situations and then see which, if we can do what you're suggesting. I don't know that we're opposed to it. We're trying to figure out sort of a little bit more direct route that didn't cut across the hill quite, so much.
The tree versus ADA, and then having an ADA compliant intersection there, I think would win my vote more so than a meander and maybe not compliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we want to do everything we can to try to comply. That's our first goal. There is a really nice maple on that corner that unfortunately is in just kind of a bad spot. And that's been one thing we've been kind of working around. There's a storm intake, there's some inlets and some other things in the Montgomery Street intersection area, immediate area, that have kind of dictated where we chose to try to maybe just move and get away from that. But I would be happy to look at it if that would help, because our alternative, unfortunately, in the in the Commerce right away is a fairly tough thing to do and miss utilities, trees, and avoid retaining walls. That's something that part of why we proposed the route we have, and without the other route, the conventional route has a few more caveats. And that's the entire length of Commerce, not just the intersection that we're talking about here.
I have just a question from John. This is on the agenda as approval. Does that mean that we have to act on it, or can you just give me some direction on that piece?
No, if the council wants to table it until the next meeting, but I think if you have any direction for staff, whoever makes that motion, that would be helpful.
I'm not saying that may be the way they want to go. I just wanted to make sure.
I appreciate the question, Mayor. I mean, I think there's no reason we can't do the site plan approval tonight. We can do it contingent on them, following city ordinances with regard to the sidewalk. And if we keep doing that, then maybe people will stop asking us to have site plans that don't follow the city law.
What's council's?
I guess
I'm fine making it contingent on sidewalks.
Okay, I'm going to move approval of the site plan contingent on the items mentioned by Travis, and additionally contingent on a sidewalk that extends along Commerce Drive as near the right-of-way as is practical, and along the property line on the west. Whatever, was that clear view? Thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion by Zittergruen.
I'll second.
Second by Neal. Any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. Roll call.
Zittergruen?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Chisel? Olson?
Aye.
Luce?
Aye.
Very good. We'll look forward to hearing more. I'll put it that way. Okay. Consider approval of 2022 Cycle 3 Zero Emissions Grant Application.
Okay, so this grant is it's a result of the Volkswagen settlement on their emissions, and so staff is asking to submit a grant application that'll provide up to 90% funding for a $15,000 project. Staff has already talked to Fairway representatives. They are supportive of a site on the west side of State Street in the angled parking adjacent. Actually, west side of State Street.
Oh, yeah, you're right. West side, yep.
So the estimated one-time costs to the city were approximately around $3,800. There will be about $1,250 in annual costs, but those again can be offset by fee structures to users. So again, this is a 90% match, up to $15,000 project. Proposal is for installation of one phase 2 charger.
Hadley will make a motion to approve the 22 Cycle 3 Zero Emissions Grant Application.
Second.
Hadley made the motion, seconded by Olson. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about this, and I just wanted to express them. I really wish that we had installed the 2 chargers already so that we could have a sense of the demand for them before we start committing to ongoing expenditures for a 3rd charger when we don't have a sense of how much need there is for it. I also am pretty convinced that Cities, if we're not careful, are going to get into the business of being everyone's electric car charger provider, and I don't know if that's a road I want to go down too far. I see providing these services as a stopgap while private industry figures out, how to provide these services, which I think will happen. Hotels are already installing them. Popular tourist destinations are installing them. Homes are installing them. And so I don't know how far down this road I want to go. I guess that's the reservation I have. I'm not sure exactly, do I draw the line at this ongoing $1,300 expense? I sure would like to know how much demand there is for the ones we're already committing to spending money and time on. And I'm curious if the timing of this grant requires that we act now, or if there's a yes, Jeremy's given me just a yes.
It does have a
So
deadline coming up.
If the ongoing costs, right, are built into the fee structure. So there's a couple things I think to address your concerns, right? This wouldn't be an ongoing cost to the city in that we build that into the fee structure. When we looked at the fee structure for the other two chargers, which we discussed at sustainability, the other thing that you can build a fee structure around is actually so that people don't use it as their personal charging station. So you can charge per kilowatt hour, but as they're on there longer, the fee gets greater, right? So that you lose the benefit of just leaving your car there as a parking spot all day. I think you can look at Luther chargers and know that they are full all the time. And I do think that we're moving towards an electric car economy. And if we're not, we're in more trouble than we can, right? So 3 chargers in a size of Decorah, I don't see as a problem. I think that the fact that there are grants right now and incentives, there will be less and less. So as a city, if we're going to do this, we probably should do it now. My hope is that someday we'll own them, we can slap solar panels on them, and we can get the revenue from them as opposed to giving them back to Alliant. But that's just my take on them.
How confident are you that we're going to recoup all the operating expenses from the fees we charge? The ones at Luther are busy all the time, but they're also free.
We can.
No, they're not free.
They're not free. They're
Charge
not
point.
free. You could. West Union would know, right? They've got 2 or 3 in West Union.
There are 20,000. There are 20,000 electric vehicles in the tri-state area. We're going to have 3 chargers. Kelly Batchelder said that they have.
I read that.
Yeah, record stuff. So I don't think that 3 chargers are going to be bad. I would go on record of saying that I am 90% confident that we will recoup the $1,350 that we would be having based on that metric that it is underserved right now. So using the grant application to bolster it as a stopgap as commercial businesses come on board or more people put them in their parking lots for private businesses, I think it's good. But I don't think that 3 is gonna break us. I feel confident that we'll recover that cost.
So the other 2, as noted by Stephen before, those just came in last week on Thursday, so we physically have them now. And
Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the reasons for this specific site being considered is the other 2 were proposed to be at North Alley. So let's try and get on the opposite end of the downtown district and try and position them in such a way that gets exposure to additional areas.
I think this is a no-brainer. I think we need to go forward with this. I see 2 on one side of town and 1 on the other side of town as a perfect opportunity to be able to study how this goes, how this works, at very limited expense to the taxpayer and to the city. So I think this is a really good opportunity to pursue.
Okay. Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Livingston.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Consider acceptance of easement from Luther College on Poline Road.
This is in conjunction with the project. The city secured additional easement for basically widening that area there, additional control, water control. There's no financial cost to the city. Sum of $1, and all things considered. Some legal requirement, I can't remember why, but
Well, it's a buck.
it is a buck. I'll make sure we give a check, maybe cashiers. But Luther's already agreed to this. This was actually thought to have been agreed upon and filed before the project started, but got dropped. So typically something like this we would like in place beforehand. It's common to not file them until after the project's done, just in the event that, you know, field conditions change things and you gotta change the legal description slightly, but this one just kind of seemed to have gotten missed.
I move acceptance of the easement.
I second.
Moved by Zittergrund, seconded by Neal. Any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. Roll call.
Zittergrund?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Chisel? Olson?
Aye.
Luce? Luce?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Consider approval of an application for bipartisan infrastructure law, BIL, airport terminal program funding.
Okay, so again, this is a revenue side of the potential project for the terminal airport hangar. And so I'm stressing revenue side because this is the application to get $300,000 from the bill funding. If you remember, the Airport Commission made a recommendation and the council approved an amended capital improvement plan that would lower the local match over a 2-year process. Receiving these grant funds were part of that CIP. So, and there will be a second state portion. This is a federal program. There will be additional grants sought as part of this project. Again, this is just to revenue. It is not authorized the project.
Make a motion to support the bipartisan infrastructure bill transport terminal program funding request.
Second.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Olson. Further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Neal?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Luce?
Aye.
Zittergrund? Hadley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, you're gonna have to give me a number, because I've only got XXXXXX.
That I did not get, was not able to get around to getting those numbers pulled today.
How would you like me to state that?
I would like
then?
Terry to
Table.
come back, please.
I really want to call it the quadruple X. I support resolution quadruple X.
I will say there are several communities that they don't number the resolution until after they approved. When they're presented to council, they're left blank, because then the assumption is we don't number them until they're approved, so we don't have gaps. So
Can we make up a
I'm
number?
just pointing that out.
Sequential resolution number.
Yeah, feel free to start that if you want to.
Okay, so that didn't quite answer my question when I first started.
So consider
Well,
the
Mike
next
wanted
sequential.
Well,
In the,
he'll pull one up.
I think in the 2023 evaluation, we need to have this be mandatory.
It would appear that 32567, thank you, would be available.
Okay,
320567.
Yeah.
it's 32.
3257.
It's 3257.
3257.
Correct. Okay. Consider resolution 3257, setting the salary of the city manager. I will note, since it'd be maybe a little hard for him to note it, according to the contract that we signed, that after a successful evaluation, his salary would be increased to $125,000. And so that is what 3257 is related to.
Luce would move 3257.
Neal, second.
Motion made by Luce, seconded by Neal. Roll call.
Luce?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Zittergrund?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Chisel?
Motion carries. So does that mean in the next one, it's 3258?
No.
Okay.
That's an ordinance, so.
Okay,
And it doesn't actually need a number unless the second and third readings are waived.
Okay.
Because it's not an actual ordinance yet. This is a reading.
all right. Ordinance amending the Decorah Municipal Code, Chapter 2.50 for the Human Rights Commission. This is the first reading.
I make a recommendation, or I move to approve the first reading of the Decorah Municipal Code, Chapter 2.5, Human Rights Commission change request.
Lewis would second.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Luce. Did you want to make a comment on what that change involves?
Well, I was going to rely on Melissa and John. These two worked
Okay.
directly out with each other to get through the draft language. But as Melissa pointed out in her presentation, the bulk of the change of the ordinance is taking the investigative portion out of Decorah Human Rights Commission's hands and putting it to the state. You know, there were some concerns, as pointed out, on the investigative process and how handling that information would be done as a public entity. And so, as a result of these two coordinating the effort, this is the proposed ordinance. Any other ones that you'd really want to highlight?
No, I missed Melissa's presentation, but that's the accurate summary. It takes the investigation aspect out of the local Human Rights Commission, but puts the emphasis where I think it's always, or a lot of it has been, on education. So that remains a significant part of the charge of the Human Rights Commission.
Okay, any more discussion from the council? Hearing none, I think they're clear.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, really. All right, roll call.
Stuck around.
Roll
Neal?
call.
Aye.
Luce?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Zittergruen? Hadley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Chisel?
Motion carried. Library board openings. Since we now have the application process online, and this is the mayor appointed with council approval, I'm requesting that any applicants go online and fill out the application form via that. And the applications will be due April 15th. There will be 3 openings, and one of them has to be from outside the city, so we need a county representative on that. I have talked to Kristen about the dates. Travis and I worked with the dates, but I wanted to make that clear for the public that if they wish to apply for the library openings, they could go online, fill out the application. Any other comments, questions on that? Okay, city managers report.
Okay, so last week I did attend Iowa Municipal Managers Institute in Iowa City. That we had, Iowa Municipal Managers is a collective of, I'd say it was roughly 60 to 75 other city managers, administrators that attended. Different sessions geared towards just really us in the profession and how it relates to practice in the state of Iowa. As you could about imagine, it was pretty eventful this year, including Friday's legislative update. So I'm going to bring council's attention to, if it hasn't already been geared there, there's a new piece of legislation that includes the word backfill. Guess what? It's creating another source of backfill for us by cutting property taxes and the way they are classified. HF 2552 and SF 2371. They are business property tax credit. And so it is reducing the commercial property tax rate for the first, I believe it's $150,000 valuation. They will be taxed on the residential rate. The state is agreeing, as part of this legislation, to a $125 million pool max for backfill, which should cover through 2029. After that, everything else is a loss. The reason I talk about how exciting IMMI was, our legislative update, we did get pretty fired up, and we told the Iowa League of Cities that you're not doing enough.
Good. Thank you.
We pushed hard, and we talked about a number of things, and no offense, Paul, I wish there was more in attendance to hear this, but the state either doesn't understand how property taxes work in municipal finance, or they're straight out lying to people, because this is being posed as a tax. We're reducing property taxes, but what they're failing to tell you is this will increase everyone's residential property tax rate.
Yeah.
And the same with the backfill that was just taken away from us for the second time, another form of backfill, just taken away from us from the 2015 property tax code changes. They're doing this the same year they're starting to phase that away. And so where this is getting extremely frustrating is we're trying to figure out how to continue to provide the same services with fewer resources. And what the state's not failing to do, they're doing a good job of not having the narrative, is they are essentially defunding the police and fire departments and every other component of the general fund. By reducing what can be taxed through their property tax valuations, they are defunding most of our services.
So what did the League of Cities say when you're saying you're not pressing hard enough? I mean, what can we do?
So we did have Mickey Shields, for those that have attended league functions. Mickey was the one in attendance. Alan Kemp was not available. And so Mickey is not a lobbyist, nor is he the executive director. And quite honestly, he sympathized with us. He said, I know, guys, this sucks. Right now, the state is doing no favors to cities, making our jobs extremely difficult. And, well, one of the reasons they do that is, now keep in mind, it's a conference of other city administrators and managers. He says, you guys are good at your job. They take away resources, and our jobs are to figure out how do we continue to provide these services with fewer and fewer resources. It's getting tough. And truth be told, everyone saw what our budget looked like this year. As the backfill is starting to be reduced, as multifamily residential tax rates are being decreased, and now we're getting additional commercial tax rate decrease with, again, backfill that's going to come. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you.
So
this would be the third time.
Are police and fire getting behind this? I mean, are they also complaining to the state?
That's going to be one of our approaches with the, as other administrators and managers. A few years ago, when the state looked at Chapter 20 collective bargaining, and they were going to strip away all collective bargaining rights for public organizations, who filled that state house? Police officers and firefighters. And guess who still has pretty strong collective bargaining rights? Police officers and firefighters. In the last several years, we've seen lots of legislation rolled out that are even termed, we back the blue. Well, if you do, keep funding the blue. Quit cutting property tax, quit structuring this as property tax relief, and cutting city resources. That's what the council is elected to do, be good stewards of local funds. I'll get off my soapbox.
On that note, too, I was telling him that the Iowa League has statewide mayor's Zoom on Thursday, and that is supposed to be a legislative update. So I will talk, Lisa, I'm sure there'll be other people that'll talk about that, too. And I said, it used to be we would go down to the state. People would go down and lobby. We'd encourage people to go, and I have not seen any of that done. I mean, it wasn't because, last year was the pandemic, but I question even about why there hasn't been more lobbying in person.
Yeah. And again, that may have been an
that's just
item
a
of discussion last week is it's going to take us sending people and filling the State House. Police and fire tend to get the best results. No offense to Kirsten in the library, but we send a bunch of librarians. They're not as intimidating.
Teachers even less so.
Yes, teachers even less so.
Um,
But,
Could you repeat those numbers on the commercial?
yeah, so
And the House file numbers.
House File 2552 and Senate File 2371. It's proposing $125 million of backfill capped. So if it's less, if the credit to the commercial properties across the state are less than 125, then cities are not getting more than 125. But as the cost of everyday business and the value of all of our properties increases, it's capped at 125. So in the year 2029, based on projections, even from the LSA, 125 is not going to cover it. And again, this is the assumption, which is not a good assumption, that the state will continue to fund the backfill.
But you said they were reducing the commercial property tax rate?
where are they?
Residential rate?
Correct. I believe it's for the first 150,000.
Yeah, where do they get the 125?
Yeah, several $1 billion that they had in excess of that.
Is this are they increasing the state taxes? I mean, is this that they want to still increase the state?
No.
sales tax?
No.
But that's what we asked them back in 2014 when they were coming up with this rollback crap. If you got enough to backfill it, why not just leave this stuff alone and let us operate? City, county, schools,
Right.
et cetera. And they didn't have an answer.
Yeah, why are you levying the taxes to turn around and give it to us when?
Right.
Correct, you're exactly right.
If you got all this extra money, then you're charging everybody too much. So then it should come off income or sales or whatever. But, they don't have an answer for that. And we were told too with the committee or group we met with them, that they were gonna have a kill button in there that if the backfill ever went away, those rollbacks were gonna go back to pre-2015 levels.
They're just lying liars. Can we have you, go ahead.
Let me just finish that real quick. So the commercial tax rate is at 90%?
Correct. That's the commercial rollback, 90.
4%?
Right now, residential is around 54, correct. Yep.
Have you written a letter to Bergen and, I mean, is it even worth, should we just invite him to a meeting? Should we?
I'm sure
I did. I wrote to both of them. I heard back from Bergen, but I never heard back from Clement.
So this is, again, part of our conversation last week was, quite frankly, they don't want to hear from us. Even if they are hearing from us, we're being ignored. The council approved sending those letters, no response for the previous letters. What we need is for, I brought up tonight a very good project for the community that has asked for tax abatements or TIF rebates as part of an incentive to make the project happen. Those are going to have to go away completely for us to, our current residential property tax abatement structure, it's going to have to go away if we keep having to figure out how to make up lost revenue that the state's taken away from us. So we need to get the Association of Business and Industry, ABI, the Professional Developers of Iowa, PDI, and get the Home Builders of Iowa, all of them on board and express to the state, leave cities alone. We're the ones doing the legwork for economic development in this community. And I mean we as in the communities. The state is not. The cities are what's making economic development happen here.
So did the league agree to make these calls? And I mean, are they working on this?
Mickey was going to relay that information, and there were a couple Iowa League board members. There's a few that are city administrators and managers that were in attendance, but the other component, there are several mayors, there are council members, and so we need to get the board supportive of this initiative.
I would
Is this
hope
something
that, I would hope that the league would actually have, you know, a day at there too, because even if you send stuff, they're not listening.
Yeah,
I'm
I
wondering
haven't seen one for a
about
while.
locally, if jobs and betterment, if we could get our local economic development boards to consider letters or calling as well, they might. So if council members who are liaisons would be willing to express this to them, it might be helpful.
And I did have a good conversation with Stephanie today just on this, and she was very supportive of Northeast Iowa Economic Development Directors have an organization. She wants me to give them verbiage, you know, give them guidance on what they can do.
Decorah Jobs has a meeting tomorrow at noon.
It's like they're putting something shiny in your hand while they're cutting off your arm.
Well, that leads us to Lost and I Will funding. If council wants me to move on to the next item.
What else would you like to tell us tonight?
Okay, so there is a Senate study bill right now. So just, it hasn't made it to Senate file yet. If council remembers, I brought up local option sales tax was gonna come back up. It has. This one does include the I Will funding. Was it been 10, 12 years that the state, the residents voted an amendment to the Constitution for the water quality, land conservation, funding of.
It was supposed to come out of gambling money.
Well, it was supposed to be an additional sales tax of 5/8, if I remember correct, 5/8 of a cent. I think it's 5. But what I'm getting at is the additional, what this bill is proposing is that it would make local option sales tax, and I'm emphasizing local option. So a tax that our residents voted to self-impose to achieve specific outcomes, as is everywhere across the state. That's exactly what local option is. It takes it out of the hands of local residents and makes it a state revenue and then a general fund allocation back to cities to the equivalent of 1%. I'm inserting the for now because it is a general fund allocation. They can scrap it at any point in time, just like backfills. The 5/8 of the sales tax, the 1% sales tax they want to enact, will fund the I Will, which this is what's dangerous, is that I'm up here spewing don't buy it. It makes me sound like I don't want to support funding that. But this is under the guise that cities will continue to be made whole. And we're talking over $1 million worth of street projects here, right? $1 million.
It's the erosion of home rule.
It
it's
is.
just the continued erosion of home
No, but
rule.
it's beyond that. I mean, they have promised I Will. I mean, they could also take it away from I Will, which they've done. I mean, they've made these bills and they've attached these conservation funding proposals to them. Then they pass them and then they take away the conservation funding. Like, okay, well, it's kind of funded and they cut back, and so they do this all the time.
And so I promise I won't make any political posts on behalf of the city. I promise that. But things are not all fine and dandy at the state.
No, they're not.
Again, erosion of home rule, House File 2296. These items haven't seen a lot of movement, but I've brought up in the past. That's the right-of-way management requirement of city-owned conduit, or being able to say you need to use a common trench. That bill's still sitting out there with no movement. Senate File 2361 and its counterpart in the House, they call it the Workforce Housing Omnibus bill. That's the one that talks about building codes, as well as says that if you are, again, this gets to the political back the blue type language, that if you are a military veteran or a Purple Heart recipient, have a license plate that displays such, you cannot be given a parking ticket. It's illegal to give somebody with a Purple Heart license plate or I believe it's veteran plate, Yes. So, in theory, that person could park across the school's sidewalk in front of the building, and you can't give them a ticket. You can't do anything. Any handicap spot, they can park in the front yard, and you can't do anything about it. What does that accomplish? Supportive of our vets. Get
Okay.
off my soapbox again.
Okay.
On a, well, it's not really a lighter note, but different topic, Bob Jostin, who was the founding partner of Dorsey Whitney office in Des Moines, long-term, I believe he had been there, well, I know over 50. He was in there in the 70s. But Bob Jostin passed away last month after a short battle with cancer. At IMMI, he was a recipient of the Joe Lucart Award, which is presented to basically champions of local government. And that's very much what Bob was. He was the creator, and I mean true creator, drafted the legislation for home rule. Creator of TIF in Iowa. Again, drafted the legislation. And now that he's gone, we have a serious concern on who's going to fill that void, because anytime there were possible amendments being considered to TIF especially, even the state would call Bob and say, you know, we're thinking about this. What do you think? So we have, you know, obviously Bob was a huge player in local governments, and we're really fearful with his loss, what that's going to mean.
I have a question. I mean, you know this better than anybody, and we've asked you to write a letter to the State House, obviously. I'm wondering if council was supportive, if you could write a press release about these funding bills and what it means to city budgets. I think that trying to figure out how to inform people about to get the word out so that they hear from other people besides councils and political bodies would be really good. And I wish I could do it, but you have, or send me language, but I still think coming from you is going to be the least political and most like factual.
I am working on a purely factual analysis of pre-2015, if everything would have been left alone, pre-2015 to now, to if 2552 or 2371 move forward, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That would be great. And I would actually be very supportive if you posted it to the city website, because I think we need to do a better job educating people about how our budget works, because they can't make it, you know, you vote for someone, but you don't realize the implications of what's that's doing to your city budget, because no one understands the process.
I think you all know how sympathetic I am to all of these issues, but I feel like the conversation is veering into what would be more appropriate with cheese curds at T-Box. And, I mean, I don't know if we're going to solve this problem
I think
tonight.
you've done a good job of putting what was in my head too. So, okay.
That's it.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
Moving on.
All right. How about over at the department head table?
I just want to give a quick, brief update. Travis and I and Carrie did meet with Adam from Nrcs Fiber to talk about some of the work that he had done for the city. Since then, we've tasked Adam to do some additional things for us. Hopefully, we'll have that information real soon. And we've also found out some additional information that we'll hopefully be able to, as Travis and I dig into that, we'll be able to report back on that, maybe hopefully by the next council meeting, and give council an update on the fiber stuff.
There's another community that has made a unique, taken a somewhat unique approach to it, that it's still going to be tough to achieve in Decorah, but it might be easier than the current approach that we've been trying. So I know it's been what, 4 or 5 years? And I don't want to be, well, what's another couple months? But if this holds water and this works for this other community, I think we'll be quickly behind in that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to send out kind of an open invitation to council members. If you guys ever have questions on the building code process, permitting, just questions in general of, you know, how the department is, feel free to come to me. I'm available anytime for questions, go through scenarios, whatever you guys want. So I'm always here to answer questions for you if you got anything.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that.
I would say, Jeremy, you're going, right?
Yep, I'm almost a little scared to share good news from the state, but I will.
No.
We found out last week we are going to be receiving a $500,000 grant, Water Infrastructure Fund grant, from
It's
the
not
Iowa
their own
Finance
money
Authority.
anyway.
What?
It's not their own money anyway.
Okay, fair enough. From the Iowa Finance Authority, three projects. The majority is the repairs to the diversion channel upstream of the cut. We're also going to be installing 2 oxbows, which are a stormwater best management practice, on Dry Run Creek along Mill Street on property owned by the city, as well as an infiltration basin up in Phelps Park to capture some of the runoff from there. So in addition, we were a partner on the county's grant for $500,000, which was also funded. And part of that is a source water protection study for the city, where we'll look at impacts to our drinking water, but also areas for stormwater up in the watershed. So that coupled with the WQI, I won't repeat the whole abbreviation that I gave last time, but it's about $1.6 million worth of work in dry run watershed. So, and grants cover about 1.1 of that. So
I wanted to make note of what can be done when the county and the city work together on a project to be able to get funds.
yeah, so Winnebago County Conservation's been a great partner, Northeast Iowa RC&D, Winnebago County Economic Development, lots of good partners coming together to make put these applications together, and so now we got a lot of work to do, but it's
Yeah,
good.
well done.
So, the only other, just real quick update, the yard waste site is going to be operating for at least a while with a key checkout system. So keys can be checked out at the street department over the weekend, a couple days, whatever folks want. But if you get any questions, please have them call us, we'll get them a key.
Is that because of mud? Or
That is
load
because
or
of a couple things. We're trying to better control what we're receiving. Over the past 2 years, we've been leaving it open all the time. If you recall, years before that, it was 2 half days a week. Much easier for us to leave it open all the time, but we're seeing a lot more material than we think is coming from just inside the city. We're also seeing it treated as a landfill in some regards. And so, unfortunately, we have only a few bad actors, but we're just trying to control that a little bit more. Our processing fees, grinding fees have doubled over the past 2 years from $10,000 to about $20,000. So a couple of reasons. I'm not saying this will be forever, but we want to try it and see how this process works.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none? Steve Zittergrun.
I've got nothing.
Ross?
nothing at this time, Mayor.
Dirk?
Nothing, but we do have Decorah Jobs meeting tomorrow at noon.
Good. Oh, yes. Did you have any let's see, no, you weren't. Do you have any meetings you attended?
I have continued to do my online education series that I signed up for. It's been really great. I should send you all some links sometime.
Okay, Kirsten.
2 things real quick. I don't know how many of you follow like Andy Carlson's website, but I've been talking to his family and stuff like that. I know he had his bone marrow transplant. It went well. His sister, who gave the bone marrow to him, she, I think, planned to go back to work today. She's a teacher. She had last week off, and Andy has to spend 100 days. I think he's probably down to 90 some days he's got to spend. So if anybody can send any words of encouragement his way, he would appreciate it, I'm sure, and get him back on his feet and get him out of the hospital. One other thing, the mayor's asked me to serve on the Upper Iowa River Watershed Management Authority. We did have one meeting back in December, but it's pretty much in conjunction with what Scott Cagle was presenting here tonight with the stuff that they were doing. I know they did, I think they got a $4.5 million grant and did approximately 25 projects that they had along the Upper Iowa River from Howard County down through Winnebago and through Alameda County. And I think they have 4 or 5 left that they're going to finish up this spring. So I think we have a meeting next April, or this coming April, and our next one, and hopefully I'll have an update on where that is, so when we move on with this, we can have some updated information.
Thank you. Emily?
Sustainability Commission met on Wednesday. We had some updates from things that they're working on. We gave them essentially the go-ahead because I think we heard it for recycling downtown, but there's some discussions about what those bins will look like. But essentially they are moving ahead now with recycling downtown and the plan for that. We talked about the chargers, the 2 chargers that we have from Alliant that are here. Steve, I didn't say this during the discussion before, but I did want to tell you that in the fee structure that we looked at the commission, it's going to essentially equate to about $2.10 a gallon of non-gas, right, for someone using the charger, and that would cover all fees currently, and that includes partially of the $10,000 that it costs to install them, right? So I think there's good reason to be happy that the fees will be recouped. But the one thing I will say, and I think staff will probably work on it with them, that is frustrating to the commission is that they had hopes of saying, let's put the chargers right behind the co-op, but they're not something that we want to move easily. And so with discussions around what we might be doing with that parking lot and discussions around what we might be doing with North Alley, I think some serious consideration needs to be put into where those charging stations go. And so I don't know if council wants to think about that and give some input, but everyone is anxious to have those chargers up and going, and so trying to find the best location on North Alley would be helpful if you have some ideas. Other than that, we talked about our discussion of the plan. They're anxious for us to hit land use and water quality, and I do think, and I have not discussed this with Jeremy or Travis, so sorry for surprises. I think in thinking about what happens at sustainability, it is really beneficial to have Jeremy there. I don't want to add one more thing to your plate, or that you both need to be there. No, but I do wonder about if looking at the agenda and thinking like, when is it more appropriate? Because I think the commission feels like, okay, we're charged with doing this plan, but it's got a lot of like water quality. They're always looking for grants. I mean, a lot of people on that commission are grant-minded people who are like, oh, there's this grant out here. We should look for this. But I don't want this to keep being a surprise to the city. Like, the commission's working on this grant. And so I'm just trying to think of ways to foster better communication between, especially when it just comes to the grants. It does seem like there's been twice now where I feel like city staff is finding out later than they want to, but commission is trying to get enough information, and it just, I don't want that to be a problem, and I'm just trying to think of how to deal with that. So I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, we've talked about this among staff that, I'm not trying to discredit the state. Don't take this as discrediting their work or anything like that. But it does create an extra layer of, I'm going to call it difficulty, where, yeah, sustainability is trying to take these and run with it, and then sustainability is handing it off to staff and saying, all right, staff, we need you to make a recommendation to council to do this. And we're like, whoa. I'm not going to put my name to this until I evaluate, and the same with Jeremy. So we need to work them together at the same time.
Right, which is why I just feel like, and there's no way for me to be that liaison because I'm not at all the little other groups, right? So I don't know how we want to work that communication structure, but I'd like to work on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is, yes, that's good.
Nothing this evening,
Mandy?
Mayor.
Steve Luce.
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay. We had our first housing ad hoc committee meeting, which went well. We will be meeting again on Wednesday, April 6th from 11:30 to 12:30 here. Their preference was to meet in person. And so we're kind of just getting our feet on the ground. And also there is a new study that Stephanie is coming out or has come out with, so we will be looking at that. So we will continue to meet on a regular basis. I read today that Upper Explorerland is moving their offices to Decorah from Postville. They're going to go into where they are now, which I hadn't heard that. Other than that, I got to go to West Side and do guest reading, which I love. Let's see. Yeah. Right, and I just think that that's neat that they're going to be in town. They're a wealth of information and support, and got great staff. Okay, any other comments?
Mayor, I was thinking you would mention your housing meeting. Did you?
I did.
Oh, I was spacing out, sorry. Thank you. I was making sure.
Well, thank you for spacing out, Steve. You were there.
It's been a long meeting.
That's right. Okay, is there anything else? I'll ask for adjournment. Okay, thank you. Thank you very